Everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Evolving Activist. I'm Lauren Morn. And tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about walking your own path. There's been a theme in my life about finding my path, about finding my way. I'm a little bit of a nomad. Just generally, I've lived in a few different countries and can't seem to stay in one place for too long. But as well as that, I think that there's this ongoing search for home, for somewhere to belong, for some truth to follow. And I think that that's going to be a theme my whole life, really. But sometimes that searching doesn't always serve me. I've found that for example, in some relationships that I've been in the past, that I have subsumed myself into the relationship, and I've kind of lost myself in that process and forgotten what I wanted and what my values were and what my path was, and basically kind of gave myself over to the path or the wants and desires of my partner. I found that happens also when we are affiliating ourselves with organizations. Sometimes is that we become so much a part of or identified with that organization, that cause, that whatever, that we lose ourselves, our individuality, our purest essence, and we kind of just become a representative, a mouthpiece for that organization or even that person sometimes. I think this is why there are, unfortunately, so many gurus in the world. People are desperate for meaning. People are desperate for belonging. People are desperate for truth. And so if they find something or somebody that looks like they offer that, sometimes it can be very appealing, very enticing. And, also we live in a culture of celebrity, right? And so we tend to sometimes hero worship people because of their public persona. We've seen them, presenting, or we've seen the good works they do or whatever. And we kind of paint them as this, we put them on a pedestal, we paint them as this unassailable saint, right? And, I think some of the most disappointing moments of my life have been when I found out that, I've gotten to know somebody that I kind of hero worshipped, and I found out that they're really a fallible and quite often arrogant human being. And so, this person that I put on a pedestal thinking they were the most amazing, compassionate, heroic person, and to find that they may be fairly shallow in some regards, or self-absorbed, or in fact, sometimes because of this culture of celebrity that we've created, sometimes I feel that they've lost themselves as well. They've lost themselves to their persona, to this image that they've created. And sometimes that can take us to some very bad places. You see organizations that fall apart because of corruption. You see people, revered leaders, fall because they've basically started to believe that they're untouchable, and because of that start to take liberties with other people's rights, bodies, etc. And so I think that part of what I want to talk about tonight was just very much this idea of knowing who we are and getting really grounded in that, and being very clear about what our core values are, and what we really stand for, what we want to stand for in this life, and inviting challenge to that. So I think it's really important sometimes to have our beliefs or our opinions or our convictions challenged. For me, I've found that that helps me really know what's true for me and what I'm swallowing whole, what I'm thinking is true or that I'm adopting from somebody else because of whatever reason, right? There are things that we grow up with. There are belief systems, there are cultures, there are traditions, there are ways of thinking that we grow up with, thinking are the truth or thinking are the way things should be. And a lot of us don't actually ever question that. You know, yes, we may go through a bit of a Rumspringer, right? We might get a little bit rebellious in our teens or our early 20s, but then we kind of fall back into the values that were given to us, that were assigned to us in our families or by our culture. And I think that that's fine if you've looked at them and if you have decided affirmatively that those are your values. But what I find quite often when I work with people on their values and really kind of help them dig into it is that they find that sometimes what they thought was their value really wasn't. It was their mother's or their father's or their pastor or their, priest or their teacher, right? And so we need to, I think particularly just given how impressionable we are when we grow up, to really kind of sometimes take a minute and stop and interrogate those values a little bit. Because when we're blindly following another person's path or a preordained path or set of values, first of all, that's where a lot of cognitive dissonance comes in. That's where that if somebody challenges that value or that belief, that you start to feel really discombobulated because somewhere inside you, you know that that doesn't ring true, that it's not aligned with your deepest values, but you've never really thought through it, or you've never investigated it, so you don't really know why this isn't sitting right? Or why you're feeling so defensive about it. When I was in my 20s, just a little background, I grew up in a kind of a churchy background, right? I grew up going to my school was a convent. For most of my schooling was in a convent in Harare. And then I went to a girls' boarding school, a church boarding school in South Africa. We were brought up in the Christian tradition, but we changed denominations a few different times. So Methodist and, the happy clappy Pentecostals and all the rest of it. So, we kind of, I feel like my family just generally kind of was going on a journey. And so for me, I've always been, it was just assumed, right? You're a Christian and you subscribe to these values and this ideology. And I never questioned it until in my early 20s, I dated a guy who was a rabid atheist. And it was so interesting to me to be absolutely confronted, vigorously challenged at every turn on my belief system, vigorously. And what I found was really interesting was I discovered what was mine and I discovered what I had inherited. And at the same time, I was studying linguistics and audiology and discovered for me how my experience of nature and biology and how things are put together in the world, for me that reinforced my belief system, which is that I do believe that there is an order to the universe. It's not, for me, not just random. But I had never questioned or challenged the belief system that I was brought up in until I found myself in a relationship with somebody who vigorously opposed it. So it was an interesting experience for me, and I'm glad that I had it. I'm glad that we were able to have those really fiery conversations so that I could interrogate my own assumptions and my beliefs. And later on, I've spoken previously about a church that I went to. I went to my pastor and I said, "Hey, I'm having some conversations with atheists, and I really don't know how to have these conversations because, I'm clear on my beliefs, but I don't want to push my agenda and I don't want to push my ideology down somebody else's throat." And what blew me away was he said, "Look, here's a list of atheist authors. I think you should go and read them. I think you should go and learn more about their perspective and their point of view. And then make up your own mind. I'm not going to just tell you what to do." Wow, for a start, wow. I don't know of too many leaders in the more institutionalized or traditional religions that would do that. I truly appreciated that, because then I could go and I could understand the perspective of my friends and again kind of challenge my own beliefs and put my beliefs to the test. So I think that these are important conversations that we can have. When it came to going vegan, I can probably speak for almost every vegan on the planet, right? Is that you are constantly assailed with this, with people trying to tell you that, what you were brought up with, right? This carnist notion of eating animals is normal, natural, and necessary, is absolutely the truth. And so all of a sudden you have to become a registered dietitian so that you can understand and challenge some of the things that are thrown at you. Because you know what, none of us have ever, most of us, we grow up not challenging the norm, not challenging the notion that, well, why does everybody go on and on about protein, right? I've never seen anybody hospitalized for protein deficiency in the first world, at least, right? So that's part of the kind of the defense system of a dominant ideology that's being challenged. And as a vegan, I can actually welcome that rather than rolling my eyes and going, "Oh, for the love of God, not another where's your protein question." I can say, let me find out what is the deal with protein, right? Where should I get my protein as a vegan? What do I find? Oh, gee, wow, I didn't realize that broccoli and spinach had so much protein in it. So it gives me an opportunity to say, okay, I have this ethical perspective. Let me challenge that. Why did I do this? Well, I went vegan for the animals. And then, in addition to that, the planet and human rights, the rights of people who are egregiously treated in the food industry, particularly in meatpacking and slaughterhouses. I am vegan for women's rights because animal agriculture is predominantly predicated on the exploitation of the female reproductive system. So it goes to, okay, I have this belief now. I have this conviction. I would call it my ideology. And what else do I need to know, right? And am I solid in that conviction? Is it true for me? So I think, you hear about vegans who have returned to eating animals. That's because it wasn't based on their own values, right? Once you make a decision, whether it is to adopt an ideology or to reject an ideology or to take a different path on something, if you make that decision because it is truly aligned with your deepest values, then that becomes a solid and true path for you. If you make that decision because it's cool or trendy, or somebody convinced you to do it, or because somebody coerced you into doing it, or because it was just because you never questioned it, then that path is not as solid. It's a little rocky, and it's easier to walk off of it or to slip. So, so whenever people think about, if you think about changing a habit, for example, a lot of people think, oh God, I've got to give up my whatever, right? Let me talk about my coffee addiction, right? I've got to give up coffee. Oh, that's terrible, right? When I started to think about what I wanted more than coffee or caffeine in that instance, that was a wholly different experience than feeling deprived because I was going to never be able to have caffeine again. Oh my God, right? When I thought about, what, I really want my brain receptors to be able to accept the neurotransmitters that they're designed to have. I want to be able to know when I am tired and to honor that and to sleep and to get good quality sleep, because I don't want to encourage dementia or Alzheimer's or any of those other degenerative diseases when I get older. Well, all of a sudden, giving up caffeine doesn't seem like such a big deal to me, because something else is more important. And so where I'm taking this conversation is, it's really easy to follow a path that's been laid out for you and to never question it. It's harder to go and forge your own path. And it's not as hard as people think it is. Because if you know what is truly important to you, if you truly, truly know your values, and you know what it feels like to be aligned with those values, then that new path is going to be a whole lot easier. It's just going to be the way it is. So my invitation to you is to look at this for yourself. Look at your values. Look at where, if you're feeling defensive, if somebody challenges you on an ideology or a belief system or a practice or anything like that, and you start to feel defensive, sit with that for a little bit and see if there's something about what you've always accepted that might not be ringing true somewhere in your body. This is why I love partnering with my horses when they choose to work with me. That they are almost helplessly attracted, magnetized to somebody who clicks in to alignment with their values. And you see it time and time again. When somebody's working with me, my horses are at liberty. They don't have to work. I'm not asking them to. We're just around them because it's good for people to be around these animals. But boy, oh boy, if I ask the horse to come and the person is not aligned and the person is incongruent, they're like, not attractive. Thank you. Go away. You smell like drama and a headache. But when the person clicks in and all of a sudden that they're standing in their truth and their conviction, the horse's face, so by the way, horses have a lot of facial expressions. They have more facial expressions than dogs and chimpanzees, right? And when you watch them and you watch, like Fella, my big, beautiful Palomino gelding, when he sees somebody click into their truth, he gets this look on his face of absolute adoration. It is the sweetest, sweetest thing. And he comes right over. He's like, you are very attractive, human being. And that is one of the biofeedback mechanisms almost of working with the horses, is that they show us, they go, oh, hey, now you're gorgeous, right? And then my job is to say, check in with your body. How does it actually feel? What does it feel like to be that aligned and that congruent? Because I can tell you right now, it is a good, solid feeling. And somebody can challenge that state and it's going to hold. And there's not going to be defensiveness around it. There's not going to be irritation around it. It's just going to be, I believe that it is a place of love and compassion when we're fully aligned and true in our values. So that's my 2 cents for tonight. I want you to think about, is the path you're treading a path that was laid out for you? Is the path you're treading something you've never questioned? Because if it is, check in with yourself. Ask yourself, is this the truest truth for me? Is this the most congruent path for me? Does this align with my soul? Does this align with my deepest values? And if it doesn't, then let's get clear on those values. Let's look at what really, really, really works for you. Because that is where you're going to have resilience. That is where you're going to find sustainability and hope and optimism and love and compassion. That path, that when you are completely aligned with your values, that is, it's an expansive state. It's a beautiful place to be. And that is where you find peace. So think about it. What are your deepest values? Are they yours? The values that you've been living by? And if they're not, what are the values that you'd like to live by? Now, if you'd like some help with that, let me know. It's one of the things I absolutely adore working with my clients on. So reach out to me, message me, email me, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. What are your values? What are your highest values? And do you know when you're living in full alignment with them? All right. I think that'll be it for me tonight. Have a wonderful evening or day wherever you are in the world, and I will catch you on the flip side.